Video for geometry section 7.5. So we were talking about tangent, and we were talking about identifying a reference angle. Many times they give you the angle. For example, here it's 60 degrees. Since that's the only of these two angles they gave us, that's our reference angle. So naming the sides based on this position, the side farthest away on the other side of the triangle would be the opposite. This diagonal side, the longest one, would be the hypotenuse, and that would mean that the last one remaining would have to be the adjacent. So to find the tangent here of this corner would help us to find x. The tangent of 60 degrees equals the opposite, which is 15, over the adjacent, which is x. So we can take our calculators, and I showed you this in the last video. We push tangent and 60, making sure our calculator is in degree mode. I've already done that. I get about 1.732. And then I get to cross multiply here. This number could be written as a fraction if I write it over 1. So if I cross multiply this way, I get 1.732x, multiplying those two together. And then the other diagonal, 1 times 15, is 15. So all I do now is divide both sides by 1.732, and I get my value for x, which is approximately 8.7. I'm going to skip over number 8 and then do number 9. Now number 9, we have two legs on the triangle, this one and this one, so this one down here will be the hypotenuse side. Since this is my reference angle, the side opposite from that, way over here, would be the opposite. And then the other one left over would be the adjacent. In that case, this would be 20. So the tangent of 40 degrees equals opposite, which is x, over adjacent, which is 20. So again, on my calculator, I'll find the tangent of 40 degrees, which is about 0.839. And this time when I cross multiply, making this into a fraction by putting it over 1, I get 1 times x, which is just x, and then 0.839 times 20, which gives me approximately 16.8. That's number 9. So I talked about how a lot of triangles and the mathematics surrounding triangles can help us do something called indirect measure. That just means measuring something that we can't actually physically put a ruler or a measuring tape on. Here's one. Here's a lighthouse, and if we want to figure out the height of the lighthouse, we can walk a certain distance away from the lighthouse and measure the angle from the ground up to the top. That's called an angle of elevation. And if we measure the distance from the center of the lighthouse across over to our position on the ground, we can do that as well. That's 100 feet. So this being my angle of reference that can be measured, I can find the side opposite of that, which is my height, having measured the adjacent side, 100 feet. As we all know, this one would be the hypotenuse. So again, using my tangent, it would be tangent of 62 degrees equals opposite over adjacent, excuse me. So h over 100. H is not the hypotenuse, h just represents the height. It is the opposite value. So if I take my calculator and find the tangent of 62 degrees, that would be about 1.8807. And now I cross multiply. I can write that over 1 to make it a fraction. So 1 times h gives me h. And 1.8007 times 100, if I round it off to the nearest foot, gives me 188 feet. Okay, so at this point in time, If you'd like to pause the video to make sure you've gotten all your notes written down, please do so. more examples of indirect measure on the next page. We've got a drive-in movie. Those screens are really tall, so just like the lighthouse, it would be hard to measure the height of it. So we can do that using the tangent function. So we know the distance we're parked far away from the screen. We know our reference angle. So if we want to figure out how tall the screen is, I'll call that T. That T, because it's across from the angle of reference, is my opposite side. This is my hypotenuse. It's the diagonal longest side, which means that the side remaining would have to be my adjacent side. So again, we can use the tangent. This would be the tangent of 58 degrees being opposite over adjacent, so that would be T over 50. So tangent of 58 degrees on my calculator is approximately 1.6. And if I write that decimal value over 1 and cross multiply, 1 times T is T, and 1.6 times 50 is going to give me approximately 80 feet. Let's see, 30 degrees being my reference angle, the side across on the other side of the triangle being the opposite. This one is clearly the hypotenuse, so that means this one's the adjacent. So here we can find the side, unknown side x, by taking the tangent of 30 degrees. Opposite over adjacent would be 10 over x. Tangent of 30 degrees is approximately 0.57735. And if I cross multiply here, I get 0.57735x, when I multiply this way, equals 1 times 10, which is 10. Now this time I'm going to have to divide on both sides. I have an extra step. I'm going to have to divide on both sides by my big decimal. The reason why I kept my decimal really long is that when you cut it off too short, you get an answer that's not quite right. So 10 divided by that decimal is approximately 17.3 centimeters. Number 20. Here we have a reference angle over there. So the side all the way over on the other side of the triangle would be the opposite. In this case, it's been labeled x. This side, the longest side, is our hypotenuse, and whatever side is left over is our adjacent. So the tangent of 35 degrees is opposite, which is x, over adjacent, which is 14. Tangent of 35 degrees on the calculator gives me approximately 0.7002. And if I write that over the number 1, I can cross multiply here. 1 times x is x, and this decimal times 14 gives me approximately 9.8 feet, rounding off to the nearest tenth, which is one place after the decimal. And then the last example is a skyscraper. This one's a little bit trickier. You're going to have to do it in 2 separate pieces. So first you would find, if you want to find, what's the question? How far are you from your friend? So basically you want to find this distance. First you would find how far you are away from the building, which is this. And then you'd find how far your friend is away from the building, which is that far. And then in order to find this distance here, you'd subtract this large distance minus that one to give you that. So I'm going to call these T for the total distance, Y for the distance you are away from the building, and E for the distance you are away from each other. So as I mentioned, you can find Y by setting this up. Tangent of 71 degrees with this right triangle right here. The opposite from that angle is 780. and the adjacent would be this down here, which I'm calling y. So the tangent of 71 degrees, find that on my calculator, is 2.9042 approximately. If I cross multiply here, I get 2.9042y is approximately 780. And then I'm going to divide both sides by that decimal. Then I get that u are approximately 268.58 feet away from the tower. You can do that same thing by using a larger triangle. In this case, you'll find the t value. And so doing that, I'll show my work down here. The tangent of 42 degrees equals opposite over the adjacent. This time on the large triangle would be the side down here, t. I don't have a whole lot of space here, so I'm just going to calculate things that I need on my calculator. So t turns out to be approximately 866.28 feet. So if this distance here, t, is 866 feet, and this distance here is 268.58, then take this large number, subtract this, and you get e. So e equals approximately 866.28 minus 268.58. And there you go. That's the distance you are from each other. 6.28 minus 268.58. So the final answer is 597.7, which is 598 feet, rounded off to the nearest foot. And that's it, folks. That is the end of the notes for 7.5. If you want to pause the video here to get down the rest of these notes, that would be a great idea. Please do.